Lucky says we need to. Off.
Okay.
By the way, Cynthia can't hear you. Check the main by default coming. Guys, you're embarrassing us now. Thank you. No, you can't let people stand here the whole day. They got work.
Can you hear me when I speak?
What time are they coming to us? I think so. Let's do it. Yes. Yes, tell me. Not live. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I'll apologize on behalf of the team. Yes.
Yes. What needs to be sung? Let me know what needs to be sung in the next 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, in 5 minutes. Do you have to go?
Yes, I'm ready, Lucky.
Couple of bands.
All right.
Stand by, guys. Doing live, guys. Thank you.
Yes, I'm here, Lucky.
5 seconds.
Good morning and welcome to the special online broadcast on the SABC News YouTube channel. I'm Vanessa Puna and I'm stationed here at the IEC's Western Cape Provincial Centre, where of course we'll be bringing you updates as the election day progresses. Now, 3.1 million voters are expected to make their mark in this province, with a record number of 34 political parties vying for victory in today's poll. This morning we'll look at how the first few hours of voting has progressed, and we'll also cross live to our team of reporters who are stationed across the province. But joining me now for a short update is, of course, the Provincial Electoral Officer, Courtney Sampson. Courtney, a very warm good morning to you. A few hours into voting, can you give us an update on the situation on the ground in the Western Cape? Over 1,500 voting stations should have opened this morning. What is the status at the moment?
Vanessa, good morning. Yeah, thanks. The status is that all voting stations are functional at the moment, and we're very pleased with the staff out there, my colleagues here in the cross, as well as our colleagues out in the field who've been opening those voting stations, making it possible for people to be able to vote. So I think we are optimistic and cautiously optimistic that things will go well for the rest of the day. There are some observers out there as well. They are giving us feedback from the ground as well. And so I think in terms of our ability to manage whatever glitches there may be, that has been quite successful. And I think that the important thing is that the glitches will be there. It's a massive operation, almost 20,000 people that are involved in the process. And I think given all of that, we've done exceptionally well.
Thank you very much, Courtney Sampson, of course, a very busy man today, and we'll check in with you again a little bit later. So, of course, just hearing there from the IEC here in the province that there have been no major disruptions marring the start of voting here in the Western Cape. Now, since 1994, the Western Cape has been hotly contested. It's the only province not governed by the ruling ANC, and while 34 political parties are contesting, there are only 4 parties that are represented in the provincial legislature. In the run-up to this election, I've taken a brief look at the history of politics in the province, and we'll have a look at that now. In the watershed 1994 general elections, in which citizens of all races were allowed to take part for the first time, the National Party garnered more than 50% of the vote. The ANC won 33%, while the then Democratic Party managed only 6%. The NP's success at the polls attributed to a high level of fear of political violence at the time.
The National Party at the time capitalized on those very admittedly racialized fears, and the campaign was all around boycott and arson and violence and all of those kind of things. So I think in 1994 the National Party managed to convince voters that the ANC would lead the country into violence.
5 years later, in 1999, no party achieved an absolute majority in the provincial parliament, marking the beginning of a period of great turbulence in provincial politics. The ANC won 18 seats, while the New National Party won 17. The Democratic Party, with its 5 seats, went into a coalition with the NNP to form a government. In 2000, the DP and the NNP formalized their coalition by forming the Democratic Alliance. The marriage was awkward and short-lived. A year later, the NNP jumped into bed with the ANC. During the 2003 floor crossing period, 4 members of the provincial parliament crossed to the ANC, giving it an absolute majority of 22 seats in the 42-seat provincial legislature. In the 2004 election, there was again no absolute winner in the provincial parliament, and the ANC-NNP coalition continued in power. The NNP finally dissolved after the 2005 floor crossing period, and many of its members joined the ANC. In the 2006 floor crossing period, the ANC gained a further 3 members of the provincial parliament. The 2009 election marked a significant change in Western Cape politics. The ANC lost to a DA majority, which heralded the beginning of a decade in power for the DA.
What they've done wrong has been 3 things at the national level. First, soon after 1994, they abolished all customs duties on clothing, which meant that 3/4 clothing workers in Salt River and Woodstock became unemployed, so they were alienated from voting for the ANC. Next, they enforced a variant of affirmative action, which meant that, for example, coloured prison warders were limited to only 1 out of 12 jobs in the Western Cape and were limited to only 1 out of 12 promotions in the Western Cape. That too was clearly committing electoral suicide. Third, they cut back the number of posts to coloured schools alongside cutting back the number of posts in white schools in order to equalise the distribution of teaching posts with African schools. And that meant that coloured teachers in this province were demoralised and also alienated from the ANC.
The 2014 poll saw the DA garnering 59% of the vote. But politics in the Western Cape is complex, as it is the only province to have had 3 political parties at the helm. This time around, it's no different.
The management of the drought is a particular issue, as you mentioned, the whole fallout with Patricia de Lille, which is in fact ongoing. Even now, there's a ruling about giving an apology, etc. So voters would watch that, and potentially they could punish the DA. However, there is still a deep-seated anger against the ANC. So now the question becomes, does the voter cast their ballot or not? Do they swap to a different party? And that is all open questions.
Just over 3 million registered voters in the Western Cape will be casting their vote for the party they trust the most to cater to their aspirations for the next 5 years. Vanessa Puna, SABC News, Cape Town. So that, of course, a brief overview of politics in the Western Cape since democracy. And joining me now is Professor Cheryl Africa, political analyst. Prof, a very warm good morning to you. So the Western Cape, certainly one with a province with a unique political history. Let me start at the top. Can we possibly see a coalition government once all the votes are tallied and at the end of this election period?
I think a coalition is always a possibility in a province like the Western Cape, given the volatility that we've seen in voting patterns. So if the DA loses their majority, then the need for the coalition comes in again. If that does happen, the DA would actually be in quite a precarious position, given the messaging that they've had in the run-up to the elections. So, for example, the campaign about keeping the ANC and the EFF out, as well as the campaign against small political parties, most notably the ACDP, because if they were to drop under 50%, then they would be looking for coalition partners. Of course, it might not be the case. They might get their outright majority, and that's a possibility given the dominance in the province, but we can never rule coalitions out.
A short while ago in the package that just preceded this interview, we also spoke about, what the ANC, for example, as the biggest opposition party in the province, may have done wrong. We do know that the ANC, for example, in the Western Cape has never quite reached the 50% ceiling, I think 45% ceiling at most. Could we possibly see that this trend since 1994 until now could possibly have changed? We know the Democratic Alliance has been the dominant ruling party here for the past 10 years. What could the ANC or should the ANC possibly have done to increase their seating in the Western Cape?
So what happens between elections is quite important. And I think at this point, there's not that much that can be done. As you say, they've never had a majority in the province. So it would be quite a challenge for them. There's a lot of negative perceptions towards the ANC nationally, and that spills over into the provincial level as well. So unless they start to rebuild their credibility and rebuild trust, it's actually a limit to what they can do.
Prof, in the Western Cape also, a lot has been said about do we call it the so-called or the coloured vote in the Western Cape? How much of a factor is this really at the end of the day?
Yeah. So that's a question that I'm asked on quite a continuous basis. And I think actually we need to move away from that as a starting point of analysis. I mean, we've seen the study about the cognitive functioning of coloured women, and that article had to be retracted, and that was the starting point of the analysis. So with regard to elections, I think we need to focus more on political parties, the history of the political party, the behavior of the political party and their leaders, their choices and so on. So even though race is important, and even though, yes, you're right, that could be an important factor, I think we need to look at the complexity of the vote and have more nuance in our analysis and look more at what parties are doing rather than the features of the electorate.
So, Prof, we've now spoken about the two bigger parties, if you will, the DA governing the Western Cape and, of course, the ANC being the biggest opposition. We can't speak Western Cape politics if we don't speak Patricia de Lille, especially in what has happened in the past year or so. I mean, so of course, the Good Party, a new party, a couple of months old, no electoral history. Can we see that Patricia de Lille and her party will have a huge impact to make a huge difference in the outcome or in politics in this province?
Yes. So the party itself doesn't have a history, but the leader, Patricia de Lille, does have a history, and so it certainly does change the dynamic in the province, and we'll have to wait and see as to what that impact is.
Thank you very much, Prof. We'll chat with you a bit later again as well. For now, we change focus to George in the Southern Cape. Of course, a recent international poll has selected the city as one with the best quality of life in South Africa. But of course, this is not without its own service delivery challenges. Participants were asked to rate it in terms of safety, healthcare, climate, cost of living, traffic and pollution. The Garden Route town came out tops ahead of Knysna, Port Elizabeth, Cape Town and Durban. Our reporter Tanya Krauser filed this report.
With its tranquil surroundings and laid-back lifestyle, the poll says George is the most ideal place to live in South Africa. Once regarded as a retirement haven, it now attracts more younger people. It's estimated that on a monthly basis, between 50 and 70 families from around the country move here. The Rampasuds moved here 2 years ago from KwaZulu-Natal, and they've never looked back.
The cost of living is a lot cheaper here, and I'm enjoying that. I built a house in Durban, and if I compare what I've spent there in my house in Durban, I found that it was a lot cheaper here than Durban. There are some items that might be a little bit inflated because of traveling costs and things, but generally we've been spending a lot less here.
It's very peaceful, very tranquil. There's no robberies and stuff. In Durban, we had lots of incidents, lots of robberies. Here, you can leave your doors, windows open, and you can sleep and do whatever.
While housing prices are still lower than in Cape Town, an increase in new residents has put a strain on infrastructure, such as schools and hospitals.
At some stages, the leadership of this town must come together. So how can we expand our infrastructure? According to schools, there's almost no places in schools when you're moving down to George. It's a struggle to get a space there. I mean, your hospitals there's no beds available when it's crisis. Even on a way when it's accidents on the road in George, those victims are referred to Mossel Bay. So it's a real threat for George. Infrastructure, hospitals, schools.
On the other side of the N2, the township of Thembaletu is also seeing an influx of new residents. As a result, the area is exploding. The lack of housing has led to an increase in violent service delivery protests.
Inhlalo apha ayikho right. Sinokuhlala kuba sifuna sisuka emakhayeni akude. Sinokuhlala apha malungana nezitoilet esingenazo, imibane asinayo, sibasa phandle, sisebenzisa iflame. Umasipala wethu osiphetheyo uyatsho athi hayi uzazizisa inkonzo kubahlali akazifezekisi izigqibo zakhe.
Other issues such as unemployment are also a major concern.
Then I matriculated in 2017, but then after there's been no better life for us. But as we came from Eastern Cape for a better life, but ever since we came, we never seen any better life. We're struggling to get jobs. As I'm finished school, I'm struggling to get jobs, even here at home. Sometimes you go to bed hungry. We don't have necessities for us as we people.
While the Garden Routes Business Hub is a beautiful place to live, many residents have come to learn that the grass is not always greener on the other side. They are hoping that political parties will deliver on their promises of improved services after the elections. Tanya Krauser, SABC News, George.
Thank you very much, of course, our colleague there, Tanya Krauser. Now, our reporter, Overberg, is in the Southern Cape this morning. As promised, we have a team of reporters covering the elections across the province. Abra, good morning to you. Can you tell us which voting station you are at this morning, and have things gone smoothly?
Still the package.
Vanessa, good morning to you. You have to catch us at the worst time possible. We've been waiting, and then just as you crossed to me, the rain, the heavens opened, and it's just started pouring. So we'll try to get through this quickly. Myself and Spiorba, see the man behind the camera. We are currently in just outside Settingberg Bay. Other parts of the Southern Cape things have been going well. Everything's running smoothly. This, however, was a hot spot last night and overnight, and then there was some flare-up
SABC viewers. No, not at all. We can say that without any contradiction. We have 18 voting stations. All of it has been opened, including the Kolweni voting station at the bicycle shed. Last night we had a community meeting in Kolweni that you see in the background, which had protests, closing the engine, barricades, burning tires, the usual. We have not had demands at the municipality or a petition. However, from 5 o'clock this morning, the IEC has deployed all resources to all the 18 voting stations. By 6:30, we had a very long queue of voters from Kolweni waiting to cast their votes. We are still monitoring the situation. The Concord Police is dealing with the matter. There's been dockets open and arrests. And there's more investigations that will follow, and there's a high visibility to ensure that the right to vote is not impinged or disrupted at all.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. Thank you for speaking to us in the rain. Vanessa, well, there you have it. There have been flare-ups overnight, but election year, voting is going along just fine. Everything is running smoothly. But Manfred and his team, of course, will be keeping an eye on things. There are police deployed to the area to maintain law and order. Nobody's being barred from going out and voting, but we will obviously keep an eye on the situation and we'll be updating you as the day goes by. Vanessa?
Thank you very much, of course, my colleague Abra Barbie out there in the Southern Cape. Now, Hermanus in the Overberg district is one of the most beautiful coastal towns in the province. It's a popular tourist destination renowned for its whale-watching splendour. But last year, the town was thrust into the spotlight when it was rocked by violent service delivery protests in Zwelihle township. Our reporter Mariska Buerta filed this report.
The township of Zwelihle and neighbouring Mount Pleasant resembled a war zone last year. It was a no-go area. Police fired stun grenades, rubber bullets and tear gas. A police member was attacked and robbed of his firearm. Damage to infrastructure was estimated at over 40 million rand. Residents want land and housing. After the protests, 2 new informal settlements sprung up, Dubai and Marikana.
Yes, we got the land and we enjoy in our land. Just only thing now we need jobs. There's no jobs here in Hermanus. Most of people here in Hermanus, they don't get the jobs and they are struggling. But on the peace side, no, we are resting in peace.
Nearly a year on, things have returned to normal. The once no-go area is welcoming and open, residents warm and friendly and eager to have a chat with the SABC.
Everything is now back into normal. Everyone is free to campaign, as I've seen around, although I'm not a politician, but I see everyone is free to campaign. There are no hiccups. Everyone is free to do whatever they want to do, and they feel happy, as I can see, as I am also feeling happy.
Not everyone shares the sentiment, though, saying there is still underlying tension. Some say they will abstain from voting because no political party deserves their support.
We're only getting like promises and nothing is fulfilling, because every party is benefiting out of everything and we as the voters don't receive anything. We remain the same year after year, year after year. All they come is when they acknowledge you, it's when it is a voting time. And when voting time is gone, they're also gone.
For 18 days, little to no business could be conducted in Hermanus, resulting in a decline in income for both business owners and employees. The Hermanus Business Chamber describes 2018 as devastating, but says the town is on the mend. It remains a popular tourist destination and normality is setting in. The Chamber says valuable lessons were learnt during last year's chaos.
But the Whale Festival, what came out of that was a great opportunity to involve sectors of the community that before didn't benefit from that festival. Out of that, we've learned how important it is to bring people on board, make them part of the process, and let them feel that they also have a say in how things are being run. We've just had a very, very successful extreme sport adventure weekend 2 weekends ago, where for the first time also we've introduced a social street mile. We saw a number of businesses entering teams and people specifically from Zwelitshle who participated in this. And that's the lesson I think that's important.
Serfontein says it's vital that sustainable jobs are created to ensure stability and growth. And as an international publication recently voted it as the best town in the world to watch whales, Hermanus may just have endless possibilities. Mariska Botha, SABC News, the Overberg.
My colleague Mariska Botha, of course, filing that report, and she is in Hermanus this morning. Mariska, good morning to you. Can you paint us a picture at this stage on the situation? It's a few hours in the voting process. What's happening in Hermanus at the moment?
Good morning to you, Vanessa. We were in Hermanus this morning, bright and early, and we were coming to or going around in the area of Zwelitshle, where there was expected to be trouble. When we arrived here Monday, it was all peaceful and quiet, and it was the same situation this morning when we went around to voting stations in that area. There 5 voting stations there. 2 of them opened a little bit late because the scanning machine didn't work, but once they got going, everything went smoothly. In the meantime, we've made our way to Grabouw, where we are right now, in the Gerald Wright Hall in the town centre of Grabouw, where the presiding officer has kindly allowed us inside, because when we arrived here, the rain went pouring down. Of course, this is a very big voting area, and there's different kinds of voters in this area. Among a lot of the voters are farm workers that will be voting in rural areas and also coming here to town. At this hall specifically, over 4,300 people that are registered to vote, and the presiding officer telling us that about 600 of them have been voting. I'm going to step out of shot just for a short moment, just so that my colleague Mark Muhlenberg can show you the voting process is underway. Everybody here is working hard at it. It seems like everything is running smoothly here, and so far we've had no incidents or reports of people being unhappy, glitches here and there, but otherwise so far in Hermanus and in Grabouw, as far as we are aware, everything is running smoothly.
Then Mariska, of course, just in closing, over the past few days you would have spoken to residents across the Overberg region. Can you gauge their sense of expectation? What is it that they want from this election?
It's very interesting that you asked that, Vanessa, because a few days ago we were at a local farm in the area where there are workers on strike, and you would think because of their concerns, because they're complaining about wages, living conditions, those kind of things, that they would boycott these elections, saying that they don't feel represented. But it's exactly the opposite. Those workers telling us, I even made contact with the chairperson of the union today, confirming to us that they are voting today, and that's the sentiment that we've been getting from people. Here and there we've had a few that said they're not going to vote, no political party deserves their vote, but for the most part people are excited about today. As in the areas that we've been so far, in Zwelitshle, just a little anecdote, there was a gentleman after he voted, he fell down to the ground and said, thank you Lord, I could vote. So that's the kind of sentiments we saw this morning.
Thank you very much, Mariska Botha, of course, our colleague, keeping us abreast of matters in the Overberg region. Prof, perhaps, I can just, in wrapping up, we've heard from our various reporters, we've seen the inserts that we have prepared in the run-up to today. Spoke to Courtney Sampson a short while ago. There haven't been violent service delivery protests marring the election process. We have seen numerous of them in the run-up to this elections, though. Is this something that was predicted or expected?
So in the run-up to the elections, I think it is to be expected to an extent, because communities feel that political leaders are more responsive during that time, and they're not necessarily wrong in that calculation. So we do see this flare-up of protests, and it speaks to the harsh the harsh reality of life faced by many communities. Fortunately, as you say, there haven't really been disruptions now on election day, and one would hope that the weather or logistical factors would also not hinder voters.
Thank you very much, Prof. Cheryl. Africa, of course, wrapping up this broadcast live from the IEC Operations Centre here in Cape Town, and of course broadcast on the SABC News YouTube channel. Now, if you haven't yet voted, there's still time for all registered voters to head off to a voting station to make your mark. I know I did early this morning. And then join us again at 6 p.m. this evening for our next live broadcast on the SABC News YouTube channel for more Western Cape election updates as South Africa decides.